In the summer of 1922, I spent more time with Gatsby. I couldn't help but feel that there was more to him than the man I saw on the surface. The man who threw the extravagant parties, who had built the grand mansion on the edge of West Egg, was not merely defined by wealth. There was something elusive about him, something deeply hidden beneath the surface. One afternoon, Gatsby invited me into his office. There, he began to open up, speaking in fragments, as if testing me with each piece of his life he revealed. He spoke of his family, but there was something strange in his words. It was almost like a performance, carefully crafted for my benefit. He told me he came from a poor family in North Dakota, the son of farmers who could barely afford to send him to school. But then Gatsby spoke of a man named Dan Cody, a wealthy copper magnate who had taken him under his wing. Cody had been the man who had shown Gatsby what it meant to be wealthy, to live a life of luxury. It was with Cody that Gatsby had learned the ways of the rich, the manners, the clothes, the ability to move through the world with ease. From that moment on, Gatsby had adopted a new name, a new life, a life he believed he was destined for. James Gatz became J. Gatsby, the man who would one day reach the pinnacle of wealth and success. He wasn't satisfied with just living. He wanted to conquer the world around him. Through Cody's wealth, Gatsby saw what was possible. But he also realized that it wasn't just wealth that he wanted. It was Daisy Buchanan. It was Daisy who had captivated him all those years ago when he first met her in Louisville, before the war, before Daisy married Tom Buchanan. It was Daisy who had made him believe that love could be as grand as the world he imagined. And so, Gatsby's obsession with her began. A man who believed that by becoming wealthy, he could win back the love of the woman he had lost. But there was something deeply tragic about that ambition, something unattainable. As Gatsby told me his story, I began to see that he had been living for one purpose: to recreate the past. He was obsessed with Daisy, and he was convinced that by amassing wealth, he could make her fall in love with him again. He believed that if he could just show her the world he had created for her, she would return to him, and they could be together, as they once had been before the war. Gatsby had spent years chasing this dream, believing that he could recreate a moment in time that had long since passed. It was then that I understood the depth of his obsession. Gatsby wasn't just building wealth for the sake of wealth. He wasn't just throwing parties to entertain. No, he was building a world for Daisy, a world that he believed would bring her back to him. He wanted to relive the past, to recreate the love they had shared. But no matter how much money he accumulated, no matter how many grand parties he threw, he couldn't change the past. The reunion between Gatsby and Daisy was arranged by me, though I wasn't entirely sure what I was doing. Gatsby had asked for my help, but what I didn't realize until that moment was just how desperate he was to turn back time. Daisy came to my house, and when Gatsby saw her, it was as if the years between them melted away, the old love they had shared. So much of it had been buried, but it was still there, alive in the room with us. As Gatsby and Daisy spoke, it was as if no time had passed. They stood there, talking, laughing, almost as if they had never been apart. Gatsby was nervous, as anyone would be in such a situation, but Daisy was different. She was thrilled, But there was something about her that was uneasy, something hidden beneath the surface of her joy. But the past was still there, lingering in the air. Gatsby had rebuilt the world he thought would win Daisy back, but he hadn't accounted for the years, for the changes in both of them. Daisy wasn't the same woman she had been when Gatsby first met her. She had changed, she had grown older, she had married Tom. And though she still had feelings for Gatsby, she was not willing to leave her life behind. The more I observed their reunion, the more I realized the complexity of their emotions. Gatsby was obsessed with recapturing the past, with turning back time. But Daisy had lived a life with Tom, a life that was comfortable and secure. And though she still had affection for Gatsby, she was caught in the web of her own life. The world, and as the days went by, the tension between Gatsby and Tom grew. Tom, ever suspicious, had begun to notice the changes in Daisy, the way her eyes lingered on Gatsby, the way her smile deepened when he was around. Tom was a man who felt entitled to his wife, and when he sensed that something was happening between Daisy and Gatsby, he grew possessive and aggressive. Tom began to question Daisy's feelings, and the tension between the three of them became unbearable. Tom had already begun to suspect the truth about Daisy and Gatsby, but his pride, his need for control, pushed him to confront the situation head-on. Tom wasn't about to let Gatsby take Daisy away from him. Not for the world. He confronted Gatsby with all the arrogance of a man who had never had to fight for anything in his life, and Daisy, caught between them, began to falter. She wasn't sure what to do. She loved Gatsby, yes, but she was married to Tom. She had a life with him. She had children. And as much as Gatsby believed that Daisy would choose him, as much as he thought that his wealth and ambition would be enough to win her back, Daisy wasn't willing to give up everything she had for a dream. It was in this moment, during their confrontation, that Gatsby's world began to crumble. He had spent his entire life believing that if he could just make Daisy love him again, if he could just show her the life he had created, she would choose him. But Daisy wasn't going to leave Tom. She wasn't going to walk away from the life she had built. And Gatsby, for all his wealth, for all his power, could not change the reality of the situation. The tension between Gatsby and Tom reached its peak, and in that moment, I saw just how fragile Gatsby's dream really was. He had built everything for this one moment, this one hope that Daisy would return to him. But it wasn't to be. Daisy was caught in a web of her own making, and no matter how hard Gatsby tried to fight for her, he couldn't win. His dream was doomed.